Hello and welcome to Focus. Today we're discussing a land of opportunity, entrepreneurship and economic growth. But you might be surprised to learn that we're talking about Iraqi Kurdistan. Officially an autonomous region since 2005, the area prides itself for being a calm and secure place for business, even though it's just a few hours' drive from Iraq's most deadly area, Mosul. Oil is the big industry here, and by 2014, estimates suggest that Kurdistan could be exporting at least 1 million barrels of the stuff every single day, and that would mean a 50% increase in revenue, not just for the Kurds, but for the whole of Iraq. And for those who invest and live there, life couldn't be further from the high-rise flats of Baghdad.
It could be a neighbourhood of Denver or Chicago, but it's not even on the same continent. A slice of the American dream can be had here for €250,000. This is the American village in Iraq.
Hello guys, welcome home. You are the standard type of American village houses. We have all features that you have here. It is include indoor parking with automatic door, kitchen, appliances and air conditioning.
Behind the unusual project is this man, Damien Deguedre, a young French entrepreneur who decided to invest in what he considers to be the new El Dorado, Iraqi Kurdistan.
Building an American village in Iraq may sound controversial, but this is Kurdistan, an area much indebted to the Americans. Security is good here, and the area is pretty autonomous from Iraqi central government.
Sunday evening in the American village is barbecue time, with T-bone steaks and Californian wine. In this part of Iraq, the United States is seen as a friend.
After liberation of Iraq, you guys maybe don't like that sentences, the market was open wide. And the American, they create a good business environment in Iraq.
Deguedre gets around on his own, with no need for an escort or bodyguard. Peshmergas, traditional Kurdish soldiers who are part of the Iraqi army, are in charge of the area's security.
Paradoxically, it's now easier for a foreigner to come to Iraqi Kurdistan than it is for an Iraqi from Baghdad. Since 2003, the Peshmergas, Kurdish fighters, have been enforcing security here, and it's working.
Largely spared by the war, and with oil reserves aplenty, Iraqi Kurdistan's capital city, Erbil, is enjoying a construction boom. Overseas investment is pouring in. 680 foreign companies have set up shop here, aiming to get a foothold in the Iraqi market.
If an investor wants to work in Iraq, he has to be in Kurdistan. Local authorities notice and have put good initiatives in place, tax exemptions and so on. And there you have it, an economic boom.
In this part of Iraq, people come to look for what's missing in the rest of the country, like entertainment. This family's travelled from Baghdad to do some shopping and see the latest must-have electronics. Since the fall of Saddam Hussein, Iraq's 5 million Kurds have secured real autonomy. They have a regional parliament, a government and a president. There is talk of total independence, but only among Kurds.
Well, Christopher Dickey, the Paris Bureau Chief and Middle East Regional Editor for Newsweek magazine, joins me for today's discussion. Welcome to France 24. I guess the burning question is, what makes this area so different from the rest of Iraq?
Well, the Kurdish people have always seen themselves as independent of the rest of the country, whatever their juridical stance. And actually, since the 1990s, when the Americans and the French and British created a no-fly zone over Kurdistan and to protect it from Saddam Hussein, it's been building this kind of economy of its own, this independent political presence of its own, and these laws that make it very easy and profitable to invest there.
Well, we certainly are painting quite a rosy picture of Iraqi Kurdistan. Is it all so good?
No, it's not all as rosy as that. Just recently, a group of journalists who've spent years covering Kurdistan sent a letter to Masoud Barzani, the president of Kurdistan, about the murder of a young journalist there in May, and about the persecution of other journalists in Kurdistan. So there is a dark side beneath all this stability and prosperity.
And what are relations like between Iraqi Kurdistan, Baghdad, and indeed Iran and Turkish Kurdistan?
Complicated, because the Turks and the Iranians are afraid that their own Kurdish populations will want something similar to what exists in Iraq. And this autonomy that serves the Kurds so well is kind of problematic for Baghdad, although it has to be said that the president of Iraq, Jalal Talabani, is himself a Kurdish leader.
And how do developments in Kurdistan affect the rest of Iraq, do you think?
Well,
people obviously travel to be part of it.
Well, they do travel, and people see that prosperity. They want it in the rest of Iraq. But there's a lot of jealousy among the different groups in Iraq, and there's a feeling that the Kurds have got a special deal. The Sunnis, certainly in Anbar province, would like to see their own revenues increase, but whether they do it by emulating the Kurds or by tapping into other resources is another question. And of course, the Shia in the south have traditionally been the poor and underprivileged class of the country. They have a lot of oil. They want to see that kind of prosperity, but they haven't seen that kind of prosperity in the south yet.
So is Iraqi Kurdistan really the key for the rest of Iraq?
I would say Iraqi Kurdistan is the key for itself. I think they're taking care of business at home, and as long as the rest of Iraq doesn't make that too hard for them to do, there will be peace with Iraqi Kurdistan.
And could Iraq make that difficult for them to do?
It could, certainly it could. I mean, there is a national government in Baghdad. The national army is a growing and powerful institution. And although the Peshmerga that we heard about are part of the national army, it's very clear from the report that they themselves are an autonomous part of the national army.
What do you put this success down to? Is it just pure and simple money and oil?
Oil. Oil, and also I think that some of the traditional enemies of the Kurds, the Turkish government, for instance, has now been instrumental in increasing a lot of investment in northern Iraq. The Turks, who could have been very problematic for the Kurds of northern Iraq, have decided to cooperate with them, work with them, and Turkish businesses have invested heavily in northern Iraq, and that has been key to opening up the door to the rest of the world.
How do you see the future developing there? I mean, is it going to go from strength to strength? Do you see any kind of...
I think the future of northern Iraq, of Kurdistan, is quite a rosy one, all in all. But there are these political divisions. You have to remember that it's still a very heavily tribal society. There are major rivalries among the political leaders. Those two, Jalal Talabani and Masoud Barzani, have worked against each other and with each other for a long time. But we don't know what will happen when things pass on to the next generation.
As we've been talking about, Kurdistan is an autonomous region in its own right. It has been since 2005. Do you think it will ever be fully independent from the rest of Iraq and indeed its other
I don't think so.
countries?
I think that they recognize in Kurdistan that that's a red line they don't want to cross. That if they cross that line, their problems with Turkey, with Iran, will suddenly multiply, even explode. And that's why they don't want to do that.
Okay, Christopher Dickey, Paris Bureau Chief and Middle East Regional Editor for Newsweek magazine. Thank you very much indeed for joining us for this edition of Focus. Do remember you can watch this edition again and all our other programmes on our website. Just log on to www.france24.com. That's france24.com. Do join us again next time. More headlines coming up here on France 24.
France 24 presents The Observers. Get a different view of the news. Yours. Photos, videos, and on-the-spot eyewitness accounts verified by our journalists and published on our website.
Welcome to the France 24.
The Observers. It's also on TV, with webcam reports from our observers around the world. The Observers, an interactive network of some 5,000 people. The Observers. It's them, it's him, it's her, and you can be part of it. Find out how at observers.france24.com. You too can be our eyes across the globe.